Hello, all, and welcome to the Movie Bears podcast. I'm Brad Harris, and each week I'm joined by some of my favorite husky, hairy, huggable homos to talk about movies, something that, of course, we love on this show because it's in our title. We've got a big show coming at you this week. We are running down our top 10 films of 2018. Given that there's three of us, I don't know how much overlap there'll be, but we could potentially be talking about a fuck ton of movies, maybe that you haven't seen. So maybe you'll get some good recommendations for things to check out. It'll be like an hour and a half long plugs section. We'll see how that goes. But before we dive into that, I need to introduce you to two gentlemen I literally couldn't live my life without. Jim Pugliafico is here with us. Hey, sweetheart, how you doing?
Glad to be here. I'm doing good. I'm excited for tonight's show. Hope to hear from other folks out there. I can't wait to hear your list because we've kept our lists kind of secret from each other up until right now. So I'm really excited. And by the way, welcome to the podcast, everybody who's joining us for this special one.
I'm anxious to hear what you guys came up with on your list as well. In years past, we've had a ton of overlap. I don't know if we will this year. It'll be interesting to see. But before we start going through those movies, we got one more fella to introduce you to. His name, of course, is Will Lindis. Will, how are you?
Hey everyone, welcome to the Movie Bears podcast. I'm your host for this episode within an episode, Will Lindis, and right now I'll be counting down my two favorite people to talk movies with. It's Brad Harris and Jim Pugliafico.
He didn't give us an order, as you notice.
Yeah.
We'll have to pin him down on that later.
Oh,
and I mean pin him down.
Oh, hey now.
Oh. South by Southwest is coming up
right around the corner.
Yeah,
opening film announced.
You know, it's funny, Will. I'm going to be in your neck of the woods mid-February, and then just 3 weeks later, I'm going to be back with Jim for South by Southwest.
Oh my goodness!
So I'm coming out for a week for work. Yeah, so maybe we can grab a coffee or something one night.
I would love that. I would absolutely love that.
That would be great. Me too. Well, hey. We got a lot to talk about, so I think we're just going to dive in. Before we start counting down the films, just a couple of housekeeping items. One, don't forget to say hi in the live chat. I see we've got several folks on with us at this point. We'd love to hear some of your picks. Even if you haven't ranked them, you can just tell us what your favorite movies of last year were. Last year being 2018 relative to when we recorded. And we may share those as we kind of talk through some of our picks. Also, we may spoil these films a little bit, guys, or do you think we can do it spoiler free? I don't know. What do you think?
I don't know how deep we're going to dive into these movies because we got a lot to talk about. So we're not going to be getting into too many spoilers, I don't think, on this show. We just don't have, a lot of time to talk about each movie. So yeah, I say we keep it spoiler free for the moment.
We only have a few minutes to talk. I mean, I guess caveat, whenever you're talking about any film and you're talking about the premise, there's the possibility of something very lightly being spoiled, but this is not a spoilers podcast. We're especially not going to be doing any big major reveals or anything like that in our discussions. We're just going to be talking about the things that we like.
Well, there you have it. We won't tell you that Darth Vader was Dumbledore all along.
Wait,
so you're
what?
safe. Oh shit! Sorry, Will. You didn't.
Oh my
know
god!
That?
You just ruined episode 9 for me.
Oh fuck! I'm so sorry. Not sorry.
Okay. Fine.
Oh boy. So we've got a few folks who are watching the broadcast. I don't see any activity in the live chat yet besides your comment, babe. So I'm sure folks will jump in and get chatting here in just a few as we start counting down our list. But we're going to keep things pretty spoiler free as we go through these movies, especially since it may prompt you to go out and see some good films. We don't want to rob you of that experience. So keep that in mind. Why don't we just talk for a minute about how we selected the films in our list. What was your criteria as you're going through the literally hundreds of movies you guys saw last year in picking your top 10?
Well, for me, I'll go first. I mean, for me, it was completely subjective. I saw a lot of movies this year, and I do keep a list on my phone of every movie that I see this year. So I just basically made a list. I went through each movie and kind of gave it a letter grade, basically, all the way down the list, and then sorted them out. And the ones that came out on the top with the A or whatever, I had to I ended up with about 13 films in the top section. So I had to kick out 3, and it really kills me. We'll probably talk about those 3 in honorable mentions, but it did kind of kill me to see a couple of those movies drop out. But it was a really fantastic year, I think, for movies this year. I think there was so many really, really great movies. I don't know if there was that one standout movie that like put all the others kind of in a big shadow, but there was a good group of, like, for me, it was 13. And then even the ones in the B category. I mean, and at any time I come back to this list, I could change things up. So mine was pretty easy. I mean, like I said, it was tough for those last 3, but otherwise I'm pretty solid with my list.
All right. Will, how about you?
Yeah, so for me, similar method to Jim. I track every movie that I watch on Letterboxd, and through the course of the year, I put them in a rough list of where I think they're going to fall. And then at the end of the year, I sit down and say, all right, now that I've had time to marinate on these films, most of the time, some of them are ones that, like, just came in under the wire or whatever. But, some of them are movies that we saw January, February, and I've had a chance to think about them, reevaluate them. What are the ones that I need to give a second look at? Or what are the ones that, maybe over time I've soured on a bit? This year, I ended up with 32 films that I was considering, and I trimmed those down to a top 25, which was helpful because I did I know we talked about it a little briefly, but I made a top 25 video that I put together just as a way to sort of like teach myself like editing, which was a lot of fun to do.
Yeah.
But even that, like, so okay, that's 25, but now how do I get my 10 within that? And I ended up with right around the same point as you, Jim. I ended up with 13 movies that were sort of in the top 10 contention. And at the end of the day, I just locked them in and said, I have to live with this. I can't have 13 films on this list. That is not how math works. So numbers like 11 through 13 they might as well be top 10, but they just, mathematically didn't make the cut.
Definitely can understand where you guys are coming from. I think you guys do a lot more tracking than I tend to do. My system was a little bit different. For me, this last year, anytime I saw a movie that made me stand up and go, wow, I just added it to a list. And so when we were kind of putting our list together, I just went back to that note file on my phone to see those wow movies. And check it out, you guys. I had exactly 10 wow movies.
Oh shit, that's perfect.
It was amazing. I couldn't believe how well it worked out, because I was expecting to have to do hours of work sifting through movies, and then I'm like, wait a second, no, like these are the ones that really stayed with me. And looking at the movies on this list, I'm like, yeah, no, totally, this makes sense. So I saw other movies this year. I do have some honorable mentions. I did look through the list. I picked out some movies that I was like, yeah, that could have made it. It was pretty good. But I got my top 10 wows ready to go.
Yeah, I think. Go ahead, Brad.
No, go ahead, please.
I think between all of us, we saw probably about 700 movies. And of course, there's duplication in that. But I mean, between us, there were 700, I think, screenings of movies that our eyes were subjected to this year, our eyes and ears. So we did see a lot. And even though we did see a lot, there's some that I didn't get to see. And later on, I will talk about the ones that I didn't get to see that, who knows, maybe have a chance to land on the list. Will and I had a conversation earlier about last year. We didn't get to see one of our favorite movies of the year when we did
Call Me by Your Name.
Call Me by Your Name. And we saw it kind of like right after we did the show. And we're like, damn, that should have been on our list. But, and there could be a movie out there like that right now.
Yeah. And the thing about it too, is like, it's impossible even for like, there's some people that see a ton of movies, like even more than us each year, but the last list I saw, there was something like 790 new releases that came out in 2018. Oof. That's just new releases. So unless someone has literally seen every single one of those, there's always the possibility of something being missed. So realistically, what these are, any top 10 list, ours, whoever's, it's the best of what I saw. And at a certain point, you just have to say, okay, this is what I saw, and I've got to feel comfortable with it. Good news for us is we do see a lot of movies, so we should have enough breadth of knowledge to be able to pull from a few different genres and a few different parts of the year.
Absolutely. So what we'll do then is we'll say these are our top 10 films of 2018 that we saw so far. These lists, I suppose, could change. Come Oscar season, I think those changes may, shift things a little bit. But do you guys like look at this in terms of Oscars at all? Or is this just like your top personal films?
I can tell you from experience, mine are just the films that I loved this year. The films that really made me, like you said, Brad, like say wow, or like just took me back. There were some movies that I watched, and when the credits were rolling, I was just sitting there like in stunned silence, like, oh my God, what do I do now? What did I just see? That was incredible. Or I had to think about them, or we had great discussions about on the way home from the movies. I mean, those are the kinds that stick with me. I mean, like I said, I don't have a hard criteria. I'm more, I think, of a feeler than a thinker in movies. I don't know if that makes any sense, but
sure.
I'm in, I think my Myers-Briggs is INTJ, but when it comes to movies, the F part of that like comes out really strong. And if a movie makes me feel something, it's probably going to stick with me.
Yeah, I know you're a pretty strong F, Jim.
I'm a pretty strong F.
It's you can't think about these in terms of like Oscars or awards or in terms of anyone else's list. Like when it comes to the Oscars or any award body, those are just bodies that collectively vote on things together. So the Oscars are only really valuable as a marketing tool and to determine what the Oscars thinks about the Oscars. I still enjoy playing along and kind of guessing what's going to get what. But for me, it's all a matter of these are the films that excited me in some way, shape, or form. And there's so many different things about film that can excite you. It could be character moments. It can be cinematography. It can be score. It can be the way the writing worked. It can be strong, a strong like director's hand on kind of guiding things through it, and some combination of those things. It's not the type of thing where I can say like, well, this one has the best writing, but this one has the best music, and therefore this one there. At the end of the day, it's just sort of gut instinct. Like these are the movies that excited me in some way, shape, or form. And I really loved going through my list and seeing that all of them excited me for very different reasons. And that's fun.
So are your guys' lists ranked from like 10 to 1, or is it just a pool of movies?
Mine's I'll say it's loosely ranked. Like I said, if I close the list and then I come back to it tomorrow, I could want to move some things around. So that's why I say I had to lock it in. But it is ranked. But again, being the top 10 out of a couple hundred movies or whatever it is we saw this year, like there's not a lot of delineation between one number and the next.
Yeah. Mine are ranked. But again, when you have 10 films that are all essentially 5-star movies, like this isn't saying like, well, this one's number 9, therefore it's shittier than number 3. It's like, these are all excellent films. They just had to go in some order.
Right. And that's how my list is too. I mean, I would say probably my top 3 like are definitively ranked, but beyond that, that's where it gets a little more fluidly, whatever that word I'm trying to say is. But
fluidity.
7 could easily be 8, and 8 could easily be 6, and you got to put a number. So I did. We got some folks in the live chat with us. Ryan Rivera says one of his favorite films of the year was Fantastic Jedi and Where to Awaken Them. Ryan, I wish I had seen that movie this year.
Yeah, did we see any Fantastic Jedi this year? I'm not sure.
I didn't.
Some reasonably okay Jedi, maybe.
You might be solo on that opinion.
Yeah.
Also, Bobby Miller's in the chat. Bobby, good to have you here. He says, hey guys, can't wait to hear your lists. Glad you're excited to hear those, Bobby. If you've got any picks, we'd love to hear them too. And Steve Sosa says, I see movies way too late. I feel like I'm always a year behind. I'll tell you, Steve, this year has been very, very busy for me. And I didn't see anywhere near the number of movies I've seen in years past. So I know how it goes. Also, there's other stuff to do. I blame Spider-Man on PS4 and Nintendo Switch for eating up a lot of my otherwise movie time this last year. So many great games came out. Oh my gosh. It's hard sometimes to stay.
But counteracting that is the fact that we're kind of in a changing movie environment, right? So more and more movies, even recent releases, are now being released on streaming platforms for people to watch, like at home. So it's not like you have to leave your house and go to a movie to see some movies, and more are being released that way. So that everybody can see them, as long as you have access to those platforms, of course. But I think that's a good thing for people who like movies and want to watch movies. They have more options now.
And it's not just the big platforms, obviously Netflix and obviously Hulu are big platforms that people have or probably have or are borrowing the password to or something like that. But we've also been seeing the evolution of more smaller niche channels. For example, if you are at all a horror fan, you should be incredibly excited by what's happening with Shudder right now, which is putting out a lot of original content and also helping to get independent horror film in front of more eyes than ever before. These were the types of films that you used to have to kind of cross your fingers and hope there was a VHS copy of somewhere in your state. And now, you can see them the same year they're released, sometimes even the same month or the same day they're released from your computer, from your television. So it's an incredible time to be a movie fan.
So borrow a password and get out there and watch movies.
I would just like to say that the Movie Bears podcast in no way endorses sharing of accounts in a manner that violates terms of service for the following services: Netflix, Hulu, iTunes, blah, 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 blah. Okay, there. That's out of the way.
I'm going to take that and put it as a stinger at the end of the show, but I'm going to speed it up like 3 times.
It's going to sound off.
Yeah. Nice. I should have included 8 other streaming services. Yeah. Vudu, Vimeo. Anyway. All right. So, guys, I think we're ready to get to it. Yeah?
Good yes.
Yes. This is the best part of the year. This is where we get to just talk about potentially 30 movies, if we all pick different ones, that we absolutely love. This is so cool. I'm so ready for this.
All right. Excellent. Well, then, here we go. Our top 10 films of 2018. Jim, I have no idea what the fuck you're going to do for an audio drop for that, but
I don't either.
I left you a space just in case.
I'm taking ideas for the insertion of an audio drop to kick off our top 10 of the year. So
fanfare, something like triumphant, something heroic.
Usually I do a YouTube search for some kind of fanfare and find one I like and put it in there. But and I've done that in the past, but maybe there's something else, a better idea out there.
Maybe there's I don't know, someone's done some kind of music from 2018 film montage or something we could throw in.
When in doubt, just use the fish wrap from Anna and the Apocalypse.
Well, I haven't seen that yet, so I have no idea what that means. Is it? But do it.
In what?
From Anna and the Apocalypse.
Oh, God.
Do the fish wrap.
I saw that movie. When did I see that movie? last year at Fantastic
Fest. Yeah,
not this past year.
not this past one.
No.
It's been like a year and a half.
Uh-huh.
Well, that
Oh,
was
goodness.
300 movies ago. Come
Yeah.
on.
All right. Well, let's do it then. Let's start with Jim. Jim, what was your number 10?
My number 10 was, I'm not usually a horror fan, but I have at least one movie that could be considered horror on the list this year, and that is one we saw at South by Southwest called A Quiet Place. This is the movie by writer-director John Krasinski. It stars him and Emily Blunt. About they're a husband and wife team, of course, in real life, but they also play husband and wife in this thriller that, without spoiling it, I guess I'll just say it's a movie about a family that is in this post invasion scenario, and they must be very, very quiet and not make any noises. Otherwise, they'll be attacked by something. So, this one, what I think helped push this in. This is a really, really good movie. But what I think helped push this into my top 10 was the environment in which we saw this movie was just really thrilling. Right, every scare, every tense moment was amplified by that experience. And it's something I just probably will never forget, is being able to see a movie like this in a setting like that with an audience. But this is really a great movie. Probably one of the best, if not the best, horror movie of the year for me. It's A Quiet Place.
And don't forget seeing it with Emily Blunt and John Krasinski like 8 seats away.
Exactly. Yeah. So you're there, and you're getting to hear their post movie Q&A to answer questions about the film, and everybody was amped up. But like I said, even if you strip that away, we saw this movie twice, I believe. I think we saw it at home as well. So I don't see many movies twice. So that'll tell you that I really like this movie, Quiet Place.
Great pick. Absolutely. Wonder if it'll show up later on someone else's list. I don't know, but we'll see. Will, how about you? What was your number 10?
It's really weird looking at this as my number 10, because I'm in my brain, there's part of me that's like, man, this could very easily be like a number 1 or a number 2 film of the year as well. But it isn't. It was a strong year for film. My number 10 is the film First Reformed, film directed by Paul Schrader. So it's the latest film from him. He both wrote it and directed it, and it reminds me a lot of one of his earlier films, and possibly also one of the best films of all time, Taxi Driver. And it reminds me of it in all of the right ways. This is about a character who it's Ethan Hawke. He's playing this minister at this small church in upstate New York, and he's grappling with all of these different things that are happening to him. He's got this gut-wrenching despair over some tragedy that happened to him in his past. He meets Amanda Seyfried's character, and she adds a few additional things through some conversations with her environmentalist husband. He has to examine his own depression. He has to examine his own doubts with the church, kind of in his place in that church, and also the impact that humanity as a whole has on planet Earth. This is a story about a man who's absolutely just pushed to the brink, who's desperate in the face of the inevitable, hoping to change the inevitable. And it's about a man who is trying to find salvation in a very, very unexpected place. Ethan Hawke, as I mentioned, is the lead here. He's one of those actors I'm always drawn to, but he is particularly exceptional here. This is a very weighty role that also often veers into kind of grim territory, but Ethan Hawke does that very, very well, and he does so without sacrificing the humanity of the character. It's not grim for grim's sake. There's also some really, really, really beautiful cinematography on display here by DP Alexander Dynan, especially this one shot you maybe see it like in the trailer, so it's not spoiling anything, but it's this outdoor shot where Ethan Hawke is standing beneath this sort of like purplish sky. This film also has a third act that is an absolute doozy. First Reformed is one of those movies that not enough people are talking about. It is phenomenal. So please, if you haven't seen it, go check it out.
Well, you use the words hopeless place. Did they use that Rihanna song?
They didn't, but I did when I thought about it later on. It very much changed the tone of the movie.
I don't even think this, as I remember, I did see the movie well, and I really quite liked it a lot, especially Ethan Hawke's performance. I'm a huge fan of Ethan Hawke in anything he does or anything he's in. But I don't even remember this movie having a soundtrack, to be honest with you. It may not. It may just have some ambient kind of thing going on. But yeah, really intense movie about, like Will said, about this Ethan Hawke character playing a minister who's really struggling with his faith. He's struggling with a lot of other outside things, and it's kind of a harrowing movie. But yeah, I really liked it. It didn't make my list. And we can talk about some of the reasons why later, but it just some things, certain scenes kind of like robbed it of its kind of broke the spell, I guess, for me. But there was other scenes that were just incredible, like the whole third act, like you mentioned, were insane.
Sammy mentions in chat, Ethan Hawke deserves an Oscar for First Reformed 100%. And yeah, if I was the Oscars, I would be giving him the statue right now.
Yeah. He deserves it many times over for a lot of other work he's done. And he hasn't always, made, I mean, he's been in crappy movies too, but most of his roles are great. I think the first Purge movie, right? Wasn't he the star of the first Purge movie?
He was.
Yes, he was. Yeah. So, but I give him credit for like trying all those things. And that again, he's a guy I look out for anywhere I can find him. I'll watch his stuff.
So I think it's funny. We're 10 minutes into this segment of the show, and we haven't even gotten through like all three of our number 10s yet. So I feel like we could be here about 6 hours at this point.
Let's keep going.
Maybe we'll bank a little bit of time, if we get some repeats. That's the hope.
Maybe. I'm going to be real brief in my intros. I think I'm just going to give an IMDb summary and maybe a little bit about who directed and who's in it. And then we can have a little back and forth maybe. My number 10 on this list is actually a movie, Will, that you turned me on to, believe it or not. It wasn't even on my radar at all. I'm like, really? A movie about a teenage girl? I don't fucking care to see that. 8th Grade, yo. It's not called 8th Grade, yo. It's just called 8th Grade. But the film is written and directed by Bo Burnham and stars Elsie Fisher as the main character, Kayla. And here's the IMDb plot summary. An introverted teenage girl tries to survive the last week of her disastrous 8th grade year before leaving to start high school. That doesn't sound like anything I'd be interested in. But we went to see this, and like the introverted, like socially awkward part of me, like wept and leapt for joy seeing this film. It made me feel so much that while Jim's peeing after the movie, the first thing I did is pull up that note file on my phone and put this in my wow category. I think there is just so much great about this film, from the acting, the music. It got me back into Instagram for like 4 months, and now I don't even open the app anymore. But this is a great film. I don't know if it'll be on anyone else's list, but this was a big one for me.
Oh man, babe, I'm so glad you had this on your list, because remember I mentioned there were 3 I had to kill off my list that killed me to take off. That was one of them. I was gonna
killed Gucci.
I was praying that you would have it on your list, and I'm so happy you did. I love this movie. It's one I really want to go back and see. It's a feel-good movie. It's a life-affirming movie, especially for people who felt like their middle school years were barely survived. You know what I mean? And they and also it's a statement about how children today have to grow up in a social networking environment. It's an amazing film for, I think, what is Bo Burnham, I think, was our first time filmmaker. with this one, or maybe second, but it's an incredible movie with a performance at the center by a 16-year-old, or I don't even know how old she is, girl, Elsie. Is it Elsie Fisher? I think.
Yes.
Yeah, it is Elsie Fisher.
Man, I would love to see her get a nomination. I mean, it's a packed field always for these individual awards, but I would love to see her get it. Thanks, babe, for that pick. That was great.
Yeah, it's on my honorable mention list as well. I'm so glad you were able to bring it up so it can get the love that it deserves. It's a very relatable film for so many of us who have had any type of like self-esteem or just where do we fit into the world issues, which a lot of people had around 8th grade. Whether, this is definitely about the female experience, but it's not specific to the female experience. So, I mean, even those of us who are guys can very much appreciate and relate to the things that she goes through in this movie. Really good pick.
Right.
Gucci. Hey, before we move on to our number 9s, Jordan Riley in the chat shared his number 10. He said his number 10 would be The Spy Who Dumped Me. I did not see that movie, but Jordan, I'm glad to hear that it made your list.
I didn't get to see that one either. Crazy how we saw. Oh, and Sammy W put one on his list that he told me about earlier in the year, and I never got around to seeing it. It's called The Zen Diaries of Gary Shandling. I think he said this one is on streaming service somewhere, and it's a documentary. He said check that out, and so it's hard on my list to see. So I'm gonna get to see that one, but he's been raving about it. So awesome. But I'm gonna get to my number 9 if that's all right.
Do it.
My number 9 is a documentary. I've got 2 documentaries on my list this year. This one is one that came out of nowhere and for me, and kind of knocked me on my ass. It's called Minding the Gap, and it's a documentary by this guy named Bing Liu. I think he's a first-time director. He's been a cameraman on other projects before, and this is a documentary about. I'll just read it. 3 young men bond together to escape volatile families in their Rust Belt hometown as they face adult responsibilities. Unexpected revelations threaten their decade-long friendship. This is a movie really about the cycle of domestic abuse, and how these characters have dealt with it, how it affects them, and how it affects their relationships potentially for their adult lives. These are 3 young guys kind of on the verge of adulthood. If you look at the movie and watch the trailer and stuff, you say, oh, this is just a skateboarding movie, but it's set against the backdrop of 3 skaters, but it's not about skateboarding. It's a really great, insightful doc that surprisingly emotional documentary. It's called Minding the Gap.
So essentially it talks about how he was a skater boy. He said, see you later, boy.
Yeah, basically. Yeah, it probably could.
It's neat because we've had 3 skateboard related movies between this mid-90s and Skate Kitchen that came out this year, and all of which are like in the conversation for best films of the year, and depending on who you are on your list set. So this is a really good one. Did not make my list, but if I was doing just a documentary list, it was in my top 3 documentaries of the year for sure.
Yeah.
Jim, I'm disappointed that you didn't use a pun like this movie skated onto my list.
Oh, I know. I'm sorry if I disappoint you in that way, but I could never. We don't mind. I could never match. I could never live up to your pun game.
Well, without the puns, we get bored. Okay.
Right.
Anyway,
right.
I'm done. All right. Sounds like a good pick. I didn't see it, but I'm glad it made your list, sweetheart. Will, what about you? What was your number 9?
So a real popular theme of the year for me was family, whether it be like the family that you're born into or the family that you make. And that's very, very apparent in my number 9 film of the year, which is called Shoplifters. It's a Japanese film about this couple living in poverty who carve out this life for themselves, shoplifting from local vendors. And it's not just them. They have a few children who they've acquired through the years from neglected homes and who they've taught the trade. This all comes to a head when this abused girl comes into their lives. She's like really young, really, really young. They decide to keep her and teach her how to steal things instead of returning her to her family. I love Shoplifters because it makes you examine concepts of legality versus goodness. Like, these are characters who are obviously breaking the law and obviously doing a lot of stealing, but at the same time, you understand that it's for them to form and build and protect and to grow as a unit. And also, and if you really think about it, these are effectively a bunch of thieves teaching acquired, so like kidnapped maybe, children how to steal things. But again, this is a movie about the love that this makeshift family has for each other, a love that rivals that of any traditional family. And the story is heartbreaking and heartwarming. I love these characters so much, and I love the bonds that hold them together. This movie actually was the last film that I saw in getting my list together, so it actually bumped something out of the top 10. So congratulations, Shoplifter. You broke another film's you broke another very similar film, actually. You broke that film's heart.
You could even say Shoplifters stole that other film's spot.
You know what? There was a spot for another film, but after Shoplifters came along, it left no trace.
Oh, well, that's unfortunate.
It is unfortunate.
We didn't get to see this one yet because it hasn't shown up here yet. I don't think it's on streaming at all at this point. It's making its way through the independent cinemas, and it'll probably get here, but it's not here yet. It's one I fully want to see, though, Will. So yeah, that's I think, again, we talked about films that couldn't make our list because we hadn't seen them yet. So we'll have to see about this one.
Indeed. All right. Well, for me, my number 9 is a little movie about a young prince who, after the death of his father, has to take control of his ancestral lands and lead his people, only to be usurped by an evil relative. I'm not talking about The Lion King. That came out many years ago. I'm talking about Black Panther. I loved this movie so much. IMDb summary, I won't even bother. I basically just gave you the summary here. Right. This movie was written and directed by Ryan Coogler. Joe Robert Cole also contributed to the writing. And stars Chadwick Boseman, Michael B. Jordan, Lupita Nyong'o, and so many other amazing actors in this cast. As much as I loved this movie, there was some controversy for me after I saw it. I made a Facebook comment, basically, comparing it to The Lion King, saying there were a lot of elements of The Lion King. And I had a lot of people tell me that I was crazy. It was nothing like The Lion King. The movie couldn't have possibly been influenced by The Lion King. Well, you know fucking what? Ryan Coogler, in his DVD commentary, talks all kinds about how this movie was influenced by The Lion King. So I feel safe, in drawing some parallels and comparisons, since the writer and the director did them himself. And I'm trying to figure out, did I love this movie so much because I love The Lion King, or because it's a great movie? And I can honestly say I love it because it's a great movie all on its own. Parallels aside, those are fun to kind of look at. I just think the strength of the cast in this film carries so much. Michael B. Jordan, guys, I know we weren't as big on Creed 2 as we were the first one, but that guy has some fucking chops. Also, body transformation. What? It's so weird to see him go from skinny to super muscular to medium build. That guy is crazy awesome in so many ways. So this was a big win for me. I wasn't sure any Marvel movies were going to make my list this year. Typically superhero movies don't, but this one did. So hat off to Black Panther. Phenomenal film.
Join us for our next podcast, which is just going to be a spinoff where we do nothing but objectify Michael B. Jordan's body for a full hour and a half, because I would 100% be on the panel for that. He is a
Sign me up.
Remarkably gorgeous human being. But in addition to all of that, he is an incredibly talented actor who brings so much to all of his roles. And he brought something very, very, very special to Black Panther, to the Killmonger role.
Yeah, Brad, I really like that movie. It didn't quite make my list, but I love that it gave us a complicated and a villain that you could kind of get behind that wasn't ridiculously silly. And also, I'm happy that you overcame your internet indignation attacks. And I mean, yeah, those Lion King parallels are definitely there. You can go back even further to, Shakespeare or whatever, but yeah, it's all there. It's that basic story, and that many movies have lifted. But yeah, great pick.
Muy excelente. A couple people in the chat have shared their number nines. Jordan Riley says his number 9 was Tag. I did not see Tag, but Jordan, glad you enjoyed it. And Sammy from Denver says Shirkers was his number 9, which I also didn't see. Did any of you guys see Shirkers?
Yes.
Yes. It's on Netflix. Yeah, it should be on Netflix right now. And yeah, it's really good. Really good pick.
Another documentary.
Yes.
It sounds like his 10 and 9 were both documentaries. So maybe he's got all documentaries.
This was a great year for horror, and this was a great year for documentaries. Like more so than a lot of years, a lot of those films are like really like funneling their way at the tops of my list. So great pick, Sammy.
This year, could we make it like a great year for like horror documentaries, and we'll call them shockumentaries?
Yeah, absolutely. I will watch horror documentaries from good to trashy all day long. I love those damn things.
Or schlockumentaries.
Ooh. Oh. Just in time for Schlocktober.
There you go. Or Sherlockumentaries, all about that terrible film that's out right now. Sorry,
I love that one.
It's that kind of night. All right, so let's move on. Yep. Jim, why don't you go to your number 8 place? What did you pick?
I picked a movie that, again, kind of came out of nowhere that I really loved. I don't know if many people are talking about this one, but they should be. It's called Leave No Trace. And this is a movie. It's a Deborah Granick directed and written movie. It stars... it's basically a two-hander starring Ben Foster, who we love, right, from Hell or High Water, many other movies. The guy's really good, and kind of a newcomer called Thomasin McKenzie, who plays his 13-year-old daughter. So Ben Foster's the dad, his 13-year-old daughter. They have kind of a let's just say a what's the word I'm looking for? A family unit that's kind of out of the ordinary. They're kind of living an existence kind of on the edges of society, a homeless existence, if you will. They live in like in a park at one point in Oregon. But then a small mistake happens and kind of upends their life. And the movie is about their bond. It's about families. It's about, it's kind of a coming of age movie in a way. It's called Leave No Trace. I can't recommend this movie strong enough. If you can seek this one out, I don't know if it's on. It's on Amazon Prime Video right now.
Yeah.
But Leave No Trace. This might get some attention this year. I don't know. It's a pretty small one. But yeah, it's called Leave No Trace.
Yeah, the director was very conspicuously absent from like the Director Guild Award nominations, and instead a director who I think did a much worse job ended up getting nominated instead. That'll be a whole different conversation.
Yeah,
but no, Leave No Trace is an excellent film. This was my number 10 until I saw Shoplifters, and that shifted everything back. So it's now at the very top of my honorable mention list, and it kind of kills me that this one didn't end up in the full running. But it's a great movie. Great movie.
It got robbed. Well, it got
robbed.
Yeah. Okay. It's my pun for the night.
All right. Excellent. Well, Will, how about you? What was your number 8?
Yes. So number 8, I absolutely could not leave Mandy off of my list. This is director Panos Cosmatos, I think is how you pronounce it. It's his acid-drenched black metal horror hellscape. 100% my type of movie. It's Nicolas Cage and Andrea Riseborough. They're in love, but after this very dizzying and terrifying encounter with this charismatic and enigmatic cult leader played by Linus Roach, Nicolas Cage is put on this path of blood, fire, and vengeance. Absolutely my favorite Nicolas Cage performance to date, hands down. He's able to really cut loose and do a lot of the things that I appreciate him about as an actor, but in a way that's in harmony with the tone of the material. It's got this super trippy color palette. It's gorgeous. Every frame is gorgeous. The violence and the gore, because there is violence and gore in the latter portion of this movie. It's ramped up and exciting, while the first part is very meditative and almost trance-like. I have to mention the score by the late Johan Johansson, who passed away this year, unfortunately. It's this beautiful blend of experimental ambiance and doom and gloom black metal. Perfect score, one of the best of the years. If it doesn't get something at the Oscars, there's a problem. Also, this movie brought us the Cheddar Goblin, who I am absolutely in love with. I have a Cheddar Goblin mask sitting up over. It's not on frame. It's actually my current profile photo on Facebook. I love this movie. It fucking rocks. It's Mandy. I hope people go check it out.
Oh, I think you're muted, Jim. Hey, Jim, you're still muted.
How's that?
Hey, there we go.
Sorry, I'll have to fix that. But Will, good pick. I did see Mandy. It is definitely out there, just like pedal to the metal, violence, craziness, Nick Cageisms, just a wild looking, terrifying at times film. Didn't quite make my list, but I think it had a lot of people talking. This was one of those movies that got released on VOD around the same time it got released in the theaters. So a lot of people had a chance to watch it, which definitely helped its credibility, if you will, out on the internet.
I want Mandy. Well, maybe not so much, but I only saw bits and pieces of this movie. I think I was playing Spider-Man when Jim was watching this, and I was kind of coming in and out of the room a little
and you're
bit.
Like, what the fuck are you watching?
I did. I was like, what the hell is this? But, I felt like I was on acid, and I've never done acid. So maybe, I don't know, that tells you something, but okay.
It's a $2.99 or whatever rental from Amazon is way cheaper than whatever designer drugs you purchase from the sketchy college kid downtown.
I suppose. Well, for me, my number 8, I'm going to bank a little bit of time. It was A Quiet Place, directed by John Krasinski, starring Emily Blunt, John Krasinski, and Millicent Simmons. So, Jim, you talked about all the other great stuff. I'm going to talk about Millicent Simmons for a second. She was fucking incredible in this movie. She plays the young girl with a hearing issue. That kind of plays into things because, it's a world where you can't make any sound. And it's, I don't know. It was pretty awesome, like seeing her do her thing. Typically, I detest child actors. They really bother the crap out of me. But she kind of sold the terror of this movie for me. And the movie also does some really cool things from her perspective. When it like shifts to her perspective, we hear the world the way that she kind of does. And I hadn't really seen a movie do it to that degree before. And so it made me have like a new appreciation. You know what I mean? For like being in that kind of situation. Obviously, most people who don't have hearing, don't live in a world where, monsters come after you if you make a sound. But I mean, hey, whatever, and a mechanism works, right? This was a great film. Seeing it out South by, Jim, you're absolutely right. It was an amazing experience. Loved being able to witness the Q&A, sitting so close to Emily Blunt. I had no idea how tiny she is in real life. She looks so tall and imposing in Mary Poppins, and she's like 4 feet tall. It's crazy. But A Quiet Place, my number 8.
Good pick, babe. I'm on to number 7 then, I guess.
You are. What is your number 7?
My number 7 is a film I think a lot of people saw this year, A Star is Born. This is the Bradley Cooper directed and also stars in this movie. It also stars Lady Gaga, Sam Elliott, a lot of other people. This is a movie that's been remade this was at least the fourth iteration of A Star is Born. Some may say the fifth. So the story is well worn. No real surprises in the story unless you hadn't seen, A Star is Born in any of its previous iterations. But I think for me, after looking at all of them, I think this is probably the best one, to be honest. And I think what makes it the best for me is I like the music in this one quite a bit. I think Lady Gaga gives a great leading performance as the hungry, talented Allie in this movie, and I think Bradley Cooper is great in this movie too. We see a different side of Bradley Cooper in this movie as the alcoholic mentor, fading star. So yeah, A Star is Born, I think, has it all. Obviously, there's going to be some talk about this movie come the Oscars time. It was a sensation, and I think it deserves to be. So number 7, A Star is Born.
Hey Jim.
Yeah.
Tell me something, boy. Aren't you tired trying to fill that void, or do you need more? Ain't it hard keeping it so hardcore?
Hey, you. Hey.
Hey, what? Ain't you that rah-rah bitch?
What?
I know this is an audio format for those listening at home. I just traced the outline of my nose.
That's right.
There you go. Well, Jim, definitely a great pick. I have a feeling we may talk more about this at some point, but totally co-sign your pick of A Star is Born here.
Excellent.
Hey, so real quick before we move on to Will, we're going to play a little catch up with the chat. Sometimes we get ahead of the chat. We got a couple of more picks from the audience. Jordan Riley said his number 8 was Game Over Man. And Sammy says his number 8 was Struggle, the Life and Lost Art of, how do you pronounce that?
Zukalski.
Let's say yes.
There you go. That may not be correct, but there you go. Will, what was your next pick?
Yeah, so for my number 7 film, so Alfonso Cuarón is like this man of so many different talents. And in my number 7 pick, Roma, he's the writer, the director, the editor, and the cinematographer. And it works so well, every single part of it. It's a black and white film on Netflix about this housekeeper in 1970s Mexico. And it's one of the best written, best directed, best edited, and best shot films of the year. The lead is this woman who I'd never seen anything before, at least if I did, I didn't recognize her, named Yalitza Aparicio. She plays the housekeeper, Cleo, and she has to balance like the subservience of her role within the family, along with like this genuine care that she feels for the family's children, as well as a bunch of stress and pain that comes from a lot of these experiences that she has with her life outside of the family. Some of the best, most beautiful camera work of the year. It's a very deliberate but very rewarding pacing for this movie. It's a type of movie that reminds me just how much potential there is within film as a whole, even for these very small, very personal films. My only gripe is that I wish it had played in more theaters. Since this is Netflix, they did a very small theatrical push just so that it would qualify for awards. But otherwise, it jumped straight to the streaming platform. So people can see it. They can see it right now. Boot up Netflix. It's there. It's Roma. But I wish more people have been able to see it on the big screen with surround sound audio, because the sound design and the visuals are stunning. And no matter how good your home setup is, it's just not the same. And I wish more people could experience that. But Roma is so good, you guys.
Does it have anything to do with tomatoes?
Nope. It has. Well, interestingly enough, I've got a 40-page diatribe on why I think no, it had nothing to do with tomatoes.
It doesn't even have anything to do with Italy, really. So, yeah, this is a great pick. I love this movie. We talked about one of those movies that I kind of sit at the end when the credits are rolling and just like like, oh my God, what did I just see? I got to see it in the theater, so I'm glad for that at the Loft. Guys, if you're in an Oscar pool picking categories this year and sound design or sound editing or whatever is in your pool, pick Roma because, you know, those are kind of hands down winners. I'm just telling you right now. Great pick, Will.
All right. Well, excellent. My number 7, I'm going to preface by saying this. A filmmaker that we know recently commented that anybody who enjoyed this movie is brainwashed and doesn't have great taste in movies and doesn't deserve
A Star is
to
Born.
be a movie critic. But you know what? I'm going to say what this film is anyway. It's probably not the most popular choice, but whatever. I enjoyed this film immensely, Bohemian Rhapsody. And I know there's some controversy out there, you know, with the director, Bryan Singer. I think a lot of my love for this movie comes from the cast, specifically Rami Malek as Freddie Mercury. I think he just does a phenomenal job. Of course, the music of Queen in this film. Obviously, this movie takes some liberties with timing. There's accusations of, like, you know, gay baiting and gay washing all at the same time. But, you know, I forgive it a few of those things. I think partially because they're trying to portray this story for an audience that, like, is probably mostly straight, and there's only so much their little, you know, straight hearts can sometimes take. Are you going to show hot, sweaty, panting leather daddies? I don't know if they could handle that. Maybe, but maybe not. Anyway, I thought this was a really fun film. The music, of course, is exceptional. How can it not be the music of Queen? Lucy Boynton in this, I really loved seeing pop up. And let's not forget the very sexy man who played Jim Hutton. So this is a big win for me. I like this movie quite a bit.
Yeah. I mean, well, I had a, you know, different experience with the film as a whole. I do have to say that Rami Malek as Freddie Mercury was absolutely stunning. Like, one of those, like, and what I mean by that is, like, he has this, like, charisma in this role that, like, I've seen him in other things and he's good, but in this, like, you couldn't take your eyes off of him. Like, you were, like, magnetically charged and drawn to him whenever he was on screen, which is something that Freddie Mercury himself possessed. And so the fact that he was able to capture that and portray that so well is really a lot of points in this film's, you know, in this tally. Like, Rami Malek is so damn good.
Yeah, and you're right, Will. I mean, that was really good. I love the music. You know, this movie, as Brad mentioned, does have a lot of baggage going with it, right? There's a lot of, you know, whether it's a problematic director, you know, issues with the way they handled Freddie's sexuality, all kinds of stuff. But I still enjoyed the hell out of watching this movie. It was still an enjoyable experience for the most part for me. And just some interesting things about, you know, a biopic. We kind of all had our image of, like, Freddie Mercury and what he was really like, because we've seen videos and stuff. And you get an actor like Rami Malek and put him in that role, and he, you know, he definitely, you look at him doing the role and you're like, yep, that's Freddie Mercury right there. So yeah, great pick, babe.
All right, excellent. Well, I think we're moving on to our number 6s. Before we do that, though, Jordan Riley in the chat shared his number 7, which was Black Panther. And yeah, I could co-sign that one. And Sammy says his number 7 was Isle of Dogs. Will, I know you were quite a big fan of that film.
I love dogs.
I am. I love dogs because I love dogs.
Right. Oh, who doesn't love dogs? I love dogs.
Oh, I get it now. Isle, I love. It's an off rhyme. Okay.
Number 6 is my other documentary on the list. It's called Free Solo. This is the Free Solo is a story of, it's a documentary about a climber. He's basically a mountain climber. And he was the first person, this is about his quest to be the first person ever to free solo up the side of Yosemite's El Capitan Wall. If you've ever been to Yosemite and seen El Capitan, it's 3,000 feet, like, of sheer rock. And this guy's climbing it meaning all by himself with no ropes and no like climbing equipment other than his hands, his feet, his shoes, and his body, and a bag of chalk to keep his hands a little bit grippy. Quite an astounding feat. But not only that, it isn't just the story of him climbing it. I mean, that's quite a feat, but it's a really great insight into not only this character and this guy and his mindset about climbing this wall, but also the people around him, the people who are making the movie even are interviewed about, like, and they're all friends, and they're like, what happens if I'm filming this movie and something I do causes my friend to fall to his death right through my camera frame? Like, what do I do then? And I mean, the photography in this is incredible, babe. There's some amazing drone stuff in this. And also, you know, from other climbers that are on the wall kind of filming him. But it's called Free Solo. It's my number 6, a great documentary. If you get to see this on the big screen, again, please do. It's a visual, like, there are moments that will like make you feel like you're hanging off that wall.
So and wait, they used drones to film Han and Chewie doing their thing?
Yeah, exactly.
That's what they freed. Yeah. Good pick, Jim. This is probably one of the most terrifying films of the year as well. If you have anything resembling a fear of heights, you'll watch this film just like white knuckling the you know, your couch cushion or whatever, because there's some moments in this where he's holding himself like several hundred feet off the ground by like the skin of his pinky and like his tiptoe, and that's the only thing. It's insane. Like I'm in awe of what this dude accomplished. Really good pick.
Thank you.
Excellent. Will, how about you?
Okay, so for my number, where are we on? 6? Number 6 film. So Dario Argento's Suspiria is one of my favorite movies of all time. So I was both really excited and also a little bit worried when it was announced that Luca Guadagnino, the dude that did Call Me By Your Name, was going to be handling the 2018 remake. After all, I love the way he tackles film, but at the same time, why do we need to remake this thing? Fortunately for me, the new Suspiria is everything that I needed and more. It's the story about this world-renowned dance academy, this young dancer who's recently joined the school, and the sinister intentions of the instructors at that academy. What I love so much about this remake is it carves its own ground. It keeps the same core premise as the original film, but many of the different beats and moments and the ways it tells the story, and even some of the ways that the story veers off, are wholly original. Every shot is more beautiful than the last. The dance sequences blend artistry and horror in this like very gorgeous macabre blend. Tilda Swinton is in it, and I mean, we already knew she was a god, right? She just reinforces that fact here. This is another film that focuses very much on intense visuals and on deliberate pacing and on fever pitch third acts, which, you know, is something that I've mentioned a couple of times with these films. So maybe that's my new kink. I don't know. Either way, Suspiria is the goods. I don't know that it's necessarily as good as the original, but I don't think it has to be one of the best films of the year. In fact, I would say it doesn't have to be the number 6 best film of the year.
Now, wait, Suspiria, that's based on the Def Leppard song, right?
Yeah, so it went Def Leppard, then it went Def Leppard first, then it went Dario Argento, and then like doodled a bunch of times on my notebook through high school and college, and then that was its lifeline.
I think it was the third album. Yeah, I think so.
Jim, I know I didn't see Suspiria. Did you?
I did, yeah, man. That third act, like Will said, is insane. If you like that kind of macabre, you know, mystery thing where you're not quite sure what's going on in the movie, and then the third act just kind of blows up, this is a movie for you. Lower on my list, but I did see it, watch it. I never saw the original, so I don't have that appreciation for the original, and that may have hampered my appreciation for this movie a little bit, but I still enjoyed it.
All right. Well, very good. Let's see. For me, my number 6, I'll give you the IMDb description. I'm sure you'll get it right away. But it's an oddity for this movie to end up on my list because I typically don't enjoy these kinds of movies. But here we go. This contemporary romantic comedy based on a global bestseller follows native New Yorker Rachel Chu to Singapore to meet her boyfriend's family. This, of course, is Crazy Rich Asians, which is another one of these films. I watched the trailer and I'm like, oh, God, no, I don't want to see this movie at all.
Rom-com.
And then Jim's like, hey, babe, why don't we go see Crazy Rich Asians? And I'm like, why did I marry you?
Because I'm just a lover of rom-coms. That's why.
But I begrudgingly went to see it, and I'm so glad that I did. Rom-coms as a genre don't do much for me. I think there's one other rom-com in the last 10 years that I really loved, and that was 500 Days of Summer, which we just rewatched with some friends for New Year's. And this movie, while very dissimilar to 500 Days, I don't know, it struck emotional chords for me that I didn't expect, similar to 500 Days. I have to say, man, there's a lot here that's great. Constance Wu, Henry Golding, and Michelle fucking Yeoh. I love her to death. I thought we're so good in this movie. And I tell you what, Michelle Yeoh, like playing like the matriarch like of this family. I both like want her to hate me and want her to love me if I ever interact with her. It's weird. I feel very conflicted, but like I want both sides of Michelle Yeoh, and maybe her foot against my throat in like a high kick or something if she'd be willing to do that for a photo. But there's
Michelle,
a lot
can you kick me right here? Can you kick me? Please?
No, it's got to be on the
Now we know
throat.
what Brad's new kink is.
Well, I want to talk a little bit about the music of this film. There's a version of Coldplay's Yellow in this movie that is
Bold
just
choice.
out of this.
Bold choice. No, really.
Yeah, it's incredible.
Yeah.
It's been on my like repeat track list ever since I saw the movie. I probably listen to it a few times a week. It's really great. So there you go. Surprise of the decade for Brad Harris. Crazy Rich Asians.
Crazy good pick.
Yeah, not so surprising for me. I know we all like that film. I knew that you and I both loved it. Again, a little bit lower on my list, but I've enjoyed the hell out of that movie. Did we see it twice?
I think we just saw it once.
Oh man, then it's due for a rewatch then for
sure.
We
need to see it again. I'd be all over that for sure.
Mm-hmm.
It's interesting. We're about at the end of our normal showtime, and we've just now gotten to the halfway point of our lists. So, man, it's going to be a long show. We may need to rein it in a little bit.
All right.
Real quick, though, Jordan Riley says his number 6 was A Quiet Place. And Sam from Denver, number 6 was The Favorite. Jim, you and I saw that. We liked it. I think it was good.
Yes.
I don't know if it made any of our lists. We'll see.
We will see.
But there you go.
We will see.
All right. We are down to our top 5, ladies and gentlemen in the audience. Just a reminder, if you are listening live, if you're in that live chat, we'd love to hear some of your picks too. Don't worry if you don't have a number or a stack ranking. Just throw out a movie.
That you really like. Yeah.
What landed on some of your favorite films of last year's list. Jim, start us off with our top 5. What's your number 5?
My number 5 is, I'm a sucker for animals. I'm a sucker for animal movies, as long as they're done well, not the cheesy ones. And there's a couple of them on my list this year. And this is one that I don't think either one of you will have on your list. It's called Lean on Pete. This is a movie that I don't think got enough. Certainly nobody's talking about it now, but the performance in this by Charlie Plummer I think is fantastic. This is an Andrew Haigh movie. He did movies and shows that we've really loved. Weekend was a show that we really liked. This one stars Travis Fimmel. It's got Steve Buscemi in it, and of course I mentioned the performance by Charlie Plummer. I'll just read the IMDb summary really quick. On this one, this is a teenager, Charlie, played by Charlie Plummer, gets a job in the summer working for a horse trainer and befriends a fading racehorse, Lean on Pete, and it becomes a road movie after that. I love this movie. Just the pacing is perfect. The cinematography is great. Again, a boy and his horse movie, just like a boy and his dog movie, but really well done. I thought the emotions that Charlie Plummer is able to, again, a movie about people kind of on the fringes of society. He's a homeless kid. It's called Lean on Pete. This one I think is on Netflix right now. It's also on Prime Video for sure. Give it a watch. I really liked it.
Hell of a year for Charlie Plummer too. He was great in this, and also really good in the Clove Hitch Killer, which is just a random little horror movie that popped up this year. So good year for him and good pick.
A name to keep watch on.
Mm-hmm. I unfortunately haven't seen the whole movie yet. Jim, I think you and I watched the first 20 minutes of it, and then we forgot to circle back.
Did we? Okay.
Yeah, but I read the book and I fucking hated the end of the book. So like I think that's part of where my like not circling back to the movie has come from. I don't know how the book compares to the film. I don't know if the ending is similar or not. But I definitely need to circle back to this one because A, I'm curious, and B, I mean, a lot of people love this film, so obviously it has something good going for it.
Yep.
Felt like I rained on your parade there. That wasn't my intention. I was just making conversation.
No. It's I never finished. You and I were listening to the audiobook, and I never actually got to the end of the audiobook. But I have seen the end of the movie. I don't want to comment and compare like how the book you know how the book ends. I know how the movie ends. So I don't want to spill anything. I'll just say that regardless of how things turn out, I just think it's a remarkable film.
I think you guys' 2019 resolutions is Jim finished that audiobook, Brad finished that movie, so that you can now meet in the middle.
Yeah.
There we go. Sounds good to me. All right. Well, what was your number 5?
Number 5. This is a South by Southwest pick. It's my favorite documentary of the year. Won't You Be My Neighbor? The documentary about Mr. Fred Rogers. I ended up seeing this one 3 times in theaters because its message of hope and of strength and kindness is something that I think we need so much of right now. Mr. Rogers was an amazing man, and this documentary by director Morgan Neville, he's the same guy that did 20 Feet from Stardom. This is a shrine to his legacy. It's a very well-crafted documentary. It moves. It elicits very strong emotions. I mean, I think all 3 times I've seen it, I've cried at one specific scene. And it's edited into this very beautiful narrative that flows through Mr. Rogers' life, his legacy, and through all the different people that he touched along the way. So it's Won't You Be My Neighbor? And if you haven't seen it, then I invite you to hop on the trolley and come watch it with me because it's so heartwarming.
Yes. Take a journey to the land of make-believe with Mr. Rogers. For all of us that grew up with him, and those of us that didn't, probably should see this movie. I love this documentary. I saw it twice. I probably cried, not just to certain scenes, but like almost all the way through this movie. It's kind of like, I don't know. It's kind of like an exorcism. Watching this is kind of like an exorcism. Puts all the good things back in your body and takes all the bad things out. Great pick, Will.
Yeah, I mean, it's definitely a really great film for so many different reasons. It's not often that I can co-sign a pick for a documentary because those just aren't typically my thing. But Will, really solid pick. Nice. All right, my number 5. I feel almost weird talking about this movie because we just talked about it last week. So I feel like it's such a retread of last week's show. But I'm going to say it. My number 5 was Bumblebee. I adore that movie so much. We've seen it twice already. I want to see it a 3rd time. It is very, very rare that I want to see a movie more than twice. But
except for The Princess Bride.
Fuck. Well, right. That's different. That's my all-time favorite movie that I watch on my birthday every year. But there's, I don't know, this whole idea. Someone in the chat last week called it a girl and her dog movie. Only the dog is, a VW Beetle
An
that can
Autobot.
transform into, a robot, an Autobot. But maybe it's the 80s nostalgia factor. Maybe it's the fact that the Transformers look like fucking Transformers now. This just like took me back to being a kid Saturday mornings, eating my Cheerios, watching Optimus Prime, and the rest of the Autobots kick some Decepticon tail. This is directed by Travis Knight, who also did Kubo and the Two Strings, which I also loved. And Haley Steinfeld plays such a great, tomboy, like breaking out of society's chains for what girls should be character. And, again, kid actors, young, I guess she's not a kid actor, but she's very young. Precocious girls typically make me want to run in the other direction. But I think she did such a good job of conveying some heavy-heartedness in this role. She's got some daddy issues, but there's a lot of fun in this movie. I think the visual effects are really, really great. And for me, it's left me wanting like 10 more Transformers films in this style. So for Bumblebee to come along and when I didn't want any more Transformers films ever, for it to do that for me, that says something. So I can't wait for round 3, Bumblebee, number 5.
It's amazing. This film it's not on my list, but I get it. It's fun. It's a lot of fun. And it redeems what for me was a bad franchise and actually makes me look forward to maybe seeing another one of these, which you would have had to have like held a gun to my head to get me to say that before this movie. So Bumblebee is definitely a move in the right direction for this franchise.
Yeah, totally co-signed on this movie. I really enjoyed it way more than I thought I would. I thought I was just in store for another CGI metal bash fest. Like the last 2 movies were totally boring, put me to sleep. But this movie actually had a nice story, a good heart. This movie was a Transformers movie with heart again. So I loved it. Didn't make my list. However, I had a thought, though. You mentioned that he's an Autobot, but I think the Volkswagen Beetle was a standard shift. So why wasn't he called a standard bot? That's, instead of an Autobot.
You're so cute.
I just thought of that. Oh, that flaw in the movie just totally ruined it for me.
So, Jim, we just found out that you can
totally
be a writer
unrealistic.
for CinemaSins. Wait, hold on. A writer for CinemaSins.
I think the reason, Jim, is because standard bots transform and roll out doesn't sound as good as Autobots. Mm-hmm. Maybe that's why.
Right.
Anyway.
All right. 2 other number 5s. While we're on number 5 real quick, Jordan's was Venom, a movie we talked about on the show this year. Venom. And then number 5 from Sammy in Denver is The Ballad of Buster Scruggs, which we also talked about on the show this year. Yes, an anthology movie. Also available right now on Netflix.
Yay, Netflix.
Mm-hmm. Woohoo. All right, moving on. Jim, what was your number 4?
My number 4 is, I'll go pretty quick, is a movie that I don't think is getting enough attention this year in spite of other movies that came out that might be overshadowing it, I think, unfairly. But this movie is called Blind Spotting. This is a great movie. I'll read the thing. It's while on probation, a man begins to reevaluate his relationship with his volatile best friend. That really just scratches the surface about this movie. This movie is about a guy who gets out of prison and he's trying to stay out of trouble on probation, but integrating back into his life is causing him a lot of jeopardy to his probation. And this movie has a lot to say. That's all I'll say about this movie's themes. It's very powerful. It's got some comedic moments, but it's not a comedy. I think this movie deserves to be seen, but it's called Blind Spotting, one word. I recommend searching this one out. You can watch it now on Prime, Amazon Prime also.
Yeah. Amazon Prime.
David Diggs and Rafael Casello,
yes,
so his name is, are so good in this. This was one of my ones where Remember I said there were like 13 that competed for that top 10 spot. This is one of the 3 that didn't make the cut. It's an amazing film, and I'm so glad it's on your list since I couldn't put it on mine.
Right. I'm glad to help out, Will, any way I can.
High five, tag team.
There you go. All right. Will, what was your number 4?
All right, so my number 4 is one that we've talked about this director before. We haven't really talked about this film before. I think easily my favorite director of the year, my favorite piece of directorial work was Barry Jenkins with the Marvel that is If Beale Street Could Talk. Remember, Barry Jenkins is the guy that brought us Moonlight, which 2 years ago, this same episode 2 years ago, was our first hat trick where all 3 of us picked it as our number 1 film of the year. So this is his follow-up. It's based on a story by novelist and social activist James Baldwin. It follows this young woman in Harlem who finds out she's pregnant around the same time that her fiance is arrested for a crime that he did not commit. So with the help of her family, she prepares a life for her child while seeking to prove her fiance's innocence. Part of what I love so much about this film is just the beautiful magnetic chemistry between Kiki Lane and Stephen James, who are the 2 leads here. It's the most fully realized and authentic love story of the year, hands down. You can't help but root for these kids. Another part of the magic comes from the fierce determination from Regina King, who plays Kiki Lane's mother in the film. And she actually just got a Golden Globe for Best Supporting Performance. So sometimes the Golden Globes gets it right. This is a story about people going through the absolute worst days of their lives, but Barry Jenkins does not make this a movie about grief or about trauma. Sure, he highlights like the social inequality and the racism that sparked the situation, but more so, this is a film that highlights hope and love in the face of adversity. It's If Beale Street Could Talk, and it is just absolutely sublimely beautiful.
Well, this is one of the ones we haven't gotten to see yet. I want to see it because it's the follow-up to a movie that I loved from 2 years ago, Moonlighting. So, I'm looking forward to seeing this one.
All right. Well, maybe we'll get to see it soon, babe. Fingers
Yes,
crossed. So. All right. Well, let's see. For me, my number 4, a friend of ours recently saw this movie and said he hated it. Jim, that's a clue. But here's the IMDb summary for this movie. A biologist signs up for a dangerous secret expedition into a mysterious zone where the laws of nature don't apply. This movie is written and directed by Alex Garland and stars Natalie Portman, Jennifer Jason Leigh, Tessa Thompson, and more. This film, of course, is Annihilation. I got to tell you, sci-fi films are an amazing thing for me, but there are very few sci-fi films that like cut the mustard enough to like break into a top 10 list for me. I think Gravity was sort of sci-fi, and it did it a few years back, and this one definitely takes the cake here. It does some kind of like trippy, weird stuff from a visual effects standpoint. The effect they used for the shimmer, like that zone that you go into,
the oil slick.
So yeah, it's so fucking cool. And I don't know, man. Like Natalie Portman hasn't always been my favorite actress. I really stood up and took notice after Jackie a couple years ago, or was that last year? I don't remember. There'll never be another Camelot. But I really love Natalie Portman in this movie. She carries so much of the weight. For a movie about like girls, investigating weird alien shit and like trying to kick butt and solve a mystery. And I mean, there's just so many cool elements happening in this film. It kept me on the edge of my seat pretty much the whole time. It was kind of like this year's Arrival for me, but like with less coffee cup stain. So
right.
I love this movie. I don't know if it's going to show up on anyone else's list, but this was a really solid one.
I'm going to bank some time.
Yeah. Great pick, Brad. I mean, I endorse everything you say. I love science fiction that does the stuff that this movie did. Like there are scenes in this movie that are terrifying, more than any horror movie I've seen this year. And then there are scenes where I'm looking at it and I really don't know what the hell is going to happen next. And that's a sign of a movie that's really got my attention. So I second Annihilation. That's all I'll say for now.
We're all about annihilating.
I'm going to second that movie.
Oh.
Oh boy, oh boy. All right. Well, we've got a couple of number 4s in the chat. Looks like Jordan Riley's number 4 was Life of the Party. Was that the Melissa McCarthy one? I'm
yes,
struggling to remember.
I think it was. I think she goes back to school or something.
Yeah, that's right. That's right. I remember the trailer now.
Yeah.
That looked like it could be fun. And then Sammy W says Leave No Trace was his number 4.
Yes. Yep. Definitely a movie. Good pick, Sammy.
All right, let's do it. We're down to our top 3, guys. Jim, what was your top 3 or number 3?
Number
whatever.
3. I mentioned I love animal movies. And this happens to be the other animal movie on my list. Coincidentally, it's also about features horses. This one is Chloe Zhao's The Rider. Man, this movie is a really quiet movie that has some amazing performances by some people who are not professional actors. The main guy in this is named Brady Jandreau, and he plays a cowboy that suffered a nearly fatal head injury that left him injured. And he kind of undertakes the search for like a new identity and a new a reason to go on. And some I don't know how to describe this movie. The photography is beautiful. The soundtrack is gorgeous. There's some breathtaking stuff in here. And the acting from this non-actor is maybe some of the best of the year. Like he puts professional actors, seasoned actors to shame. I love this movie, not just because it has horses in it, but because of the performances and kind of the emotional effect it had on me. It's called The Rider.
Yeah, she does great work with a bunch of non-actors. Like these are just these are people with a background in rodeo and ranching and stuff like that, and she pulls remarkable performances out of them. So it's a really solid pick.
Yeah, agreed. There's a scene in here that with just him breaking horses, wild horses, that is so much quiet power in it without an actual dialogue happening that it just worked its way into my psyche and I can't forget it.
All right. Well, I haven't seen it yet, but it's on my list. I want to. Okay. So clearly I need to make more time for good movies.
You got good movies.
I know. All right, Will, what's your number 3?
What was that?
Yeah. Sound effects. I did some Foley work for mine. My number 3 pick is also my number 1 horror film of the year, and it's A24's Hereditary. One of the best horror films that I've seen in years. Push me on it enough, and I might be able to lean into hyperbole on that and say, like, best we've had in decades. It's that damn good. It follows a family, everyone very distant from one another for reasons outside of their control, dealing with the recent loss of a family member. Soon they discover that there are sinister works at play and that their family is at the center of a horrific grand design that none of them can truly fathom. There's some really, really good performances here from Millie Shapiro, Alex Wolff, and Ann Dowd, who elevates everything she appears in. But Toni Collette here, her performance is next level. If you had to say, again, gun to my head type scenario, what was the number 1 best performance of the year? I would say it was Toni Collette here in Hereditary. She brings intensity to every frame, and not just when she's going batshit crazy, although that happens, but also in the quiet moments. Everything she does is very intentional. I hate it when horror films pull their punches. Hereditary has no fucks to give. It does not pull its punches at all. It creates this mythos that unravels more and more throughout its runtime. And when everything is revealed by the end of the film, it's this beautiful, fully realized, terrifying creation. This is what I need more of out of the horror genre. It's Hereditary, and it is, I mean, it affected my sleep in the way that like no horror movie ever has.
Yeah, there's at least one scene in here that I probably cannot forget. One terrifying scene about in the middle of the movie. That's incredible. It didn't quite make my list, Will. And I think the third act had something to do with that, because I felt that the first 2/3 of the movie were super strong. That like just like a wild third act can really put it on your list. A weak third act or a like what the fuck third act can maybe take it off mine. But still a great pick and a really good horror movie this year.
I just want to say I bow at the altar of Ann Dowd. She's so phenomenal in everything. And it was so great to see her pop up in Hereditary, even though this film didn't quite make my list. Definitely enjoyable. But man, I need like a day-long Ann Dowd movie marathon or something. She's phenomenal.
It's just worked for me so well. Like I feel like I just really like lost my head watching this one.
Oh boy. Oh boy. All right. Let's see. My number 3 is another movie that we saw at South by Southwest. And this is probably one of my favorite movie-going experiences of my entire life.
Oh.
This was incredibly special for me. Let's see.
Will Riker showed up? I
no. But Jonathan Frakes did touch my butt a few years ago at Star Trek convention. No, this movie was directed by Steven Spielberg and stars Ty Sheridan, Olivia Cooke, Ben Mendelsohn, and more. This, of course, is Ready Player One, based on the novel of the same name by Ernest Cline. We got to see this movie with Steven Spielberg feet away from us. With the cast feet away from us. Ty Sheridan like grabbed Jim by the collar and threw him out of his way as he was like rushing up onto stage.
Get out of my way.
Man, I love the book so much. A lot of people say it's just, a cheap cauldron full of pop culture crap that, isn't anything without its nostalgia factor. I don't think that I agree with that, but everything from like the scavenger sort of hunt storyline, solving these riddles, trying to win the contest. I'm a huge VR enthusiast. And so seeing this movie, like all of this great, cool stuff that you could do maybe in 20 years with VR technology that's out now and evolving, just blows my mind to think what we could have, and seeing it on film like that was incredibly cool. I don't know, man. Like, I'm trying to figure out if it's like just that the movie was good or like being there, with the cast and the director is like influencing me. So I watched this movie again and tried to like separate all of that out of my brain. And I'll tell you what, to the best of my ability, I still really enjoyed this movie, even with that stuff aside. It's got a great soundtrack, some really awesome like visual mashup stuff. I still haven't counted like all the cool like 80s and 70s and 90s stuff, pop culture references that popped up. I almost now want to watch the movie for like the 6th time to keep counting. But yeah, Ready Player One was my number 3.
Good pick, Brad. I remember that experience we had in the Paramount in Austin, watching that with a full crowd, Steven Spielberg showing up, amazing sound system. The crowd was going nuts for most of this movie. And Brad, I mean, I know you said that a lot of people knock it, say it's just a mishmash of like nostalgic, knickknacks kind of thrown together. But you know what? The movie makes that work. And I like the fact also, I mean, this is a guy, you're looking at a guy whose most experience with video games comes from a game called Zork and a game called Myst. And so I love those kind of quiet quest games where the kind of adventure games, and this whole movie was like a big adventure game with a lot of other pop culture stuff thrown in. I enjoyed this movie a lot. Good pick.
All right, excellent. Well, glad I'm not alone, guys. We're down to our last 2 picks. Before we do that, Jordan Riley in the chat says his number 3 was Avengers Infinity War. And Sammy's number 3 was Roma. So there you go. Some more love for Roma. Well,
Roma.
Your pick is definitely co-signed. All right, we're down to it. Our last 2. Jim, what was your number 2?
My number 2 is a movie we already talked about. It's that big, awesome science fiction movie called Annihilation.
What?
Yep, that's my number 2. I know we talked about it a lot already, but I won't have to talk about it a lot. I'll just say that I really like that movie. I'm overdue for a rewatch because we only did see it the one time. I just love those kind of science fiction movies. Brad, earlier when you talked about it, you mentioned Arrival. I thought this movie was very much like Arrival. Also like a movie called Under the Skin, if you remember from a few years ago. Kind of had that same vibe. Like, what the fuck am I watching? But it all like hung together and like just kind of blew your mind. But it didn't try to like outwit you or try to be overcomplicated. It was a pretty basic story, just well told, with some amazing scenes. So, yeah, I loved Annihilation.
I will bank more time.
Yeah. All right. Well, then why don't we go ahead and move on? Will, Jim, strong choice for you. I co-sign it. Will, what was your number 2?
So my number 2 film is actually probably going to reveal what my number 1 film is now, because my number 2 film is The Favorite. I'm a big Yorgos Lanthimos fan from his work in Dogtooth, The Lobster, Killing of the Sacred Deer. I love how he's created this very unique universe of bizarre characters. So going into The Favorite, one of my concerns was, how is this very specific director going to tackle a film that he didn't write the script for, a period piece, no less? So I was very, very, very wrong to doubt him. The Favorite is easily the funniest film I saw all year. It follows Olivia Colman. She's exquisite as Queen Anne. Rachel Weisz, I think that's how you pronounce her name, is the courtly lady who has her favor, and Emma Stone is this kind of former noblewoman from this disgraced family who seeks to take over as Queen Anne's favorite, hence the title. The 3 leads in this film are pitch perfect. This is my favorite ensemble cast of the year. And honestly, if any single one of these ladies gets any of the acting awards, they would be very well deserved. Probably especially Olivia Colman. There are so many laughs to be had in this movie, from Queen Anne's over-the-top reactions, the whole like, look at me, don't look at me. I love that, to a lot of the
Queen.
Yeah, to a lot of like the courtly intrigue, the stuff with Nicholas Hoult. He's in this. And my favorite laugh of the movie, my favorite scene comes from this incredible, beyond description dance sequence. But there's other things to love about this too. There is this use of fisheye lens, which I think usually looks pretty tacky in films, but here, like, Yorgos finds a good way to utilize it to like add like depth to his frames. When someone kind of crosses in and instead of just walking off frame, they kind of walk around the fisheye in a very weird way. This is a wonderful movie. It was almost my favorite film of the year, but almost doesn't count. But this is my second favorite film of the year.
Good pick, Will. It reminded me a lot of Barry Lyndon. If you've seen
Yes.
Barry Lyndon, it definitely reminded me a lot of that. Will, you mentioned some scenes in this movie. I like this movie a lot. It didn't make my list, but I'm surprised you didn't mention probably one of my favorite scenes of the year, which is the naked bear chub guy getting pelted by fruit. Come on. Or like 3 different shots of that.
Next year we have next week we have our MBP awards, and one of the categories is like hottest on screen moment. And I have a feeling that one's a contender. That scene is a contender for at least one of the 3 of us. So we might be able to double back around to it then.
Exactly. Good pick, Will.
Well, this film didn't make my list either. I did enjoy it. But I mean, definitely a very very solid pick here. Emma Stone, I mean, she's great in pretty much anything you put her in. And yeah. All right. My number 2 also peripherally involves a queen, sort of. There's royalty involved, and a day of the week goes with it. Can you guys figure out those clues?
Bohemian Rhapsody.
That was
Got
pretty
it in
clever.
one.
That's pretty clever. A day of the week and royalty. What movie am I talking about?
Day of the week and royalty.
You got me.
Man, I don't know.
Oh boy, I thought you guys were going to get this right away. All right, King Friday. Does that help?
Oh yeah.
Won't you be my neighbor? All about Mr.
Yeah.
Rogers. Boy, that reference was really out there, I guess.
I also obviously didn't want to steal your thunder by
that's
guessing,
what it was. Sure.
guessing your movie either.
Whatever. But I really, really loved this documentary. Will, when you were talking about it earlier, it was like all I could do to like not reveal that this was on my list. I even downplayed it. I was like, well, I don't really like docs that much, but I mean, this was a good one. This was a fucking great doc. Growing up with Mr. Rogers' Neighborhood, I don't know. I don't think I appreciated it as much as like I do as an adult. Watching back some of that footage when like, Mr. Rogers is talking to, Daniel Tiger, and, they're showing us like using these puppets to help like grieving kids and stuff. And man, I cried like probably 50 times during, not really 50 times, but I cried a lot during that documentary, and I learned a lot about Mr. Rogers. And I gotta say, part of me kind of like wants to go back and watch some Mr. Rogers highlights. Like as a 37-year-old man, I actively want to watch episodes of Mr. Rogers' Neighborhood. So loved this movie. If you haven't seen it yet and you liked Mr. Rogers growing up, this is definitely one worth checking out. That's my number 2.
That's a movie, and we all loved it. This was one of the 3, unfortunately, that I had to shave off. But I guess it's astounding, like that old adage of like you don't really know what you have until it's gone. Like I don't think the value of a guy like Fred Rogers and what he did for children's television and for children growing up like me was appreciated as much when it was happening as when you go back and watch this movie. I don't know. It just it kind of brought that to light to me, like how much that he should have been appreciated at the time. And I'm sure he was appreciated to some degree, but like, I don't know, man. It's almost like we didn't appreciate it as much at the time.
As so often happens in life.
Yeah. Yeah.
Have you ever loved something later in life, meow meow, that you didn't love when you were a kid, meow meow?
I know. Don't make me cry, Brad.
Oh, Daniel Tiger, we love you. All right. Hey, we got a couple of number 2 picks in the chat. Jordan Riley, Ready Player One. Excellent. Glad you enjoyed that, Jordan. And Sammy says number 2 for him was House that Jack Built.
Yeah. I've heard a lot about that movie. I haven't mustered up the courage to go watch it yet, but Will, I'm sure you probably saw it.
You have to be down with Lars von Trier style, which is like going kind of hardcore, and while also going into like very kind of left field, like overly artistic things, which I enjoy quite a bit. It's not going to work for everyone, but it is a really, really good film that I think has it's got some negative notoriety that I don't think it deserves. It's a good film.
I might give it a watch. I do like some of Lars von Trier stuff. Melancholia I loved. And what's the one about the bell?
Kirsten Dunst boobs.
Yeah. Exactly. I like that movie though.
All right. Very good. So
number one.
Whose turn is it? Number ones.
Back to number one.
We're there. Yeah. Oh my gosh.
We're ready
for number 1.
Made it, Brad.
Holy cow. I can't believe we are here. And yet we are
under 2 hours.
Dim the lights. calm your shit. Here we go. Our number ones. Jim, what was your top film of 2018?
We talked about this already. Will had it on his list. Brad, unfortunately, I don't think you've gotten to see it. It's Roma, Alfonso Cuarón's love letter to his childhood and his childhood caretaker when he was growing up in Mexico City. Beautiful film. It's done in black and white, very deliberately paced, but and with a soundtrack and a sound editing soundscape that is fully encompassing. If you get to see it on a big screen, you have to. Roma is my number one pick. It's one of the ones I saw later in the year. I'm glad I got to see it on the big screen. It's a beautiful film, and I think people should seek it out, especially on the big screen if they have a chance. I don't know if it will have the same impact on if you watch it on your phone or your iPad, but I loved Roma. It's my number one.
Well, Roma wasn't built in a day, and I guess love for this movie might take time. I haven't seen it yet. Wow, my work computer just randomly turned on and was really bright. But, this movie is getting so much positive buzz. I feel like I want to go see it. So I know it's on Netflix. Will, your argument earlier about seeing it in theaters, though, I don't know, on the fence. We'll see. I don't know when I'd have time to go see it. But maybe I'll circle back at some point. The only chance you might have is if it gets significant awards, and they give it another run. Because right now, I don't even think it's in theaters.
It's doing
did it leave the loft?
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
I think so. I'll check.
It's doing a super limited, because it got a little bit of buzz. It's doing a super limited 70 millimeter tour thing, but that's not going to be all cities. I don't think it's going to be the type of thing that you can really bank on. It's such a good movie. I would say it's, anything's better to watch on the big screen, and that's important. But, if not, I think it's still going to be a good, rewarding experience on Netflix as well. This is just the type of one that's since it's kind of a deliberate movie, this is the type of movie where it's put your phone in the other room and just let yourself be absorbed into the film. Because if you're the type of person who maybe I'll check my phone every few minutes, I think you'll lose some of the magic, especially towards the beginning of this one.
Well, it just checked. It is playing.
It is at the Loft. It is still
all of this week and at least part of next week.
Into next,
yeah. Jim, you're on travel next week, so maybe I'll take myself to the movies one night and see this while you're gone.
Take a friend that we know will hate it. That's what you should do.
Oh goodness! All right. Well, Jim, sounds like a really great pick. Well, what was your number one? I think I know it based on what you said earlier.
I know it.
Yeah, I'm going to unbank my time here. Here it is, the best film of 2018. I fell in love with Ex Machina a few years ago, and I think we all kind of knew at that time that director Alex Garland was destined for something great. I think very fortunately that greatness was realized kind of quickly with this year's Annihilation. On the surface, it's the story about this group of scientists. We got Natalie Portman, Jennifer Jason Leigh, Tessa Thompson, Gina Rodriguez. They're tasked with investigating this growing area called the Shimmer, a place where all of these impossible biological life forms are thriving. But for me, this is a film where the metaphorical reading is way more important than the textual reading. This is a film about our natural imperative for self-destruction, be it from sabotaging our relationships to self-harm, to substance abuse, to losing our sense of self, to grief, to hell, to even the way cancer cells ravage our bodies. We are designed to break down and break ourselves down. This is a movie about the change that's brought on by those moments of self-destruction, about how we're forever different from the experience. And it's also about how our interactions with trauma and the trauma of others, it forever changes us and it forever changes the people that we touch. It begs the question, is the person that started this journey the same person who I am today? And the answer to that question is yes. And the answer to that question is no. The answer to that question is maybe. I love science fiction movies like this, where they have a lot to say about the world and how we interact with it, especially ones that have like such amazing performances and such beautiful scenery, such terrifying moments, and such poignant lessons. More so than any movie on this list, I think about Annihilation a lot. And I imagine that, much like its themes, this movie has changed me in some small way forever. So I can't say enough good things about it.
Excellent. And it's been on your top of your list almost all year. Right? We saw this earlier in the
this
year.
movie came out. God, when did this movie come out?
Like March or something?
Super early in the year, because I remember it was, let's see, I first saw it February 25th. Yeah. So, this was one that I want to say there was some controversy with it, where it was supposed to come out at the end of 2017, but it didn't do well with like a test audience. And so it just kind of got buried in 2018, which is a shame, because man, this movie does so many things so very well. It's a thinker, and I think that not everyone likes thinker movies, whatever. If this is my list, this isn't everyone's list. Man, it's on Hulu. It just you could rent it for money before, but now if you have a Hulu account, as of I think like last week or the week before, you can watch this for free with your account. So if you haven't tracked it down yet, I implore you, please do so.
Very good.
It's a pretty awesome pick for your number one, Will. Excellent.
It's the only one I think we had in our top 5 or whatever, all of us, right?
Yeah, this is the only one that went across, which is this year has more films on the list than probably any other year that we've done. We have a lot less repeats. That's exciting.
Okay.
All right. I guess
one more to go. One more to go.
One more to go. Well, before I reveal mine, we've got a couple more from the chat. Jordan Riley says his number one was Deadpool 2. He loves the Merc with a Mouth. He said that reminded us that was the weekend of Sammy, who's in the wedding, his wedding to his husband, Steve. And also that's when we got to meet Jordan. So Jordan,
it all kind of ties together around Deadpool. Yeah. Isn't that amazing?
I guess so. I mean, that's not why we went to Denver, but no. I'm glad it worked out, of course. And Sammy says that his number one was Suspiria. So, Will, there you go. He also says big hugs, everybody. Big hugs right back, Sam. We miss you guys.
Big hugs.
All right. My number one. Some people might say, because of this choice, I'm off the deep end. But watch as I dive in. I'll never meet the ground. My number one is A Star Is Born. And I'll tell you, Will, I remember you going gaga about the trailer for this movie a while back. And no offense, but like your enthusiasm for it kind of annoyed me a little bit. I'm like, oh my gosh, can he talk about something else, please? And then you did start talking about other things, and I forgot about it. But then I kept seeing this trailer pop up. And I was like, God, like this trailer is like a short movie in itself. Like it's this incredibly like lyrical, haunting, like visual poem in a way. And so going into the film, I'm like, oh my gosh, like, is it going to be as good as the trailer? Films like usually aren't, a train wreck compared to their trailer, sometimes dependingly, right? Especially with these kinds of movies. But this one absolutely blew me away. Who the fuck knew Lady Gaga could be that great of an actress? Who the fuck knew Bradley Cooper could sing that well? And I mean, I knew this, but Sam Elliott, holy shit, guys. That dude, like, hits me like a gut punch in the feels. Every time I see him cry, I both want to like comfort him and have sex with him. It's this really weird feeling. I don't get it, but I totally do. And as a cast for this film, I just think they do such a great job. The music, it's good. It's great. Some of the songs are really phenomenal. Some of them, like I Like Your Ass in Those Jeans. No, I zapped that one out of my A Star Is Born soundtrack, so I don't have to hear it ever again. But I tell you, this is probably one of my favorite movies ever. Jim, I know you watched like all of them leading up to this. I hadn't seen any of them, so I kind of went in fresh, and this movie totally blew my mind. So there you go, my number one.
I'm glad you liked it so much. I liked it too. It's on my list. Kind of in like, I think it was like number 7. So, man, yeah, the soundtrack is great. Lady Gaga's performance. Bradley Cooper is the one who really blew me away here. Definitely deserving of number 1. I'm glad you got it in that spot, babe.
Mm-hmm. Man, what a great year for movies, guys. Holy crap. 2018 had so many good ones. Will, I know you've been tabulating in the background, kind of keeping track of our choices. Do you happen to know how many different movies we brought up?
Yes, I do. More so than just about any year we've had. We have a total of 24 films, 24 unique films. That's out of 30 potential, which means we only had 4 films overall with overlap, and one of them had a little bit of overlap. It's very impressive. I also have, if you'd like, I just did the number crunching, and I awarded some points based on and the way I did this was just super easy. If something got first place for someone, it got 10 points, second place 9, blah blah blah, all the way down. Added everything up. So the Movie Bears podcast official top 10 is first place Annihilation. Second place is Won't You Be My Neighbor. Tied in third and fourth place is A Star Is Born and Roma. Then in fifth place, we have The Favorite. 6th, 7th, and 8th are Hereditary, Ready Player One, and The Rider. And closing us out in 9th and 10th place, tied, are Blind Spotting and If Beale Street Could Talk.
That's a pretty respectable list of films, I gotta say.
Very diverse list, too. We got a lot of different films from a lot of different genres there, and I think that's a lot of fun.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. Absolutely. How many did you say we had?
24?
24 unique films.
Wow. Last year was 20, and I thought that was a lot.
The year before was the year where like all 3 of us had Jackie, all 3 of us had Moonlight in our number 1, all 3 of us. So we had a lot less films overall that year. So I like this. This is a very diverse list. It means we've seen a lot of things that we liked.
Right.
I mean, we've been recording for 2 hours, so obviously we had more unique films this year. But you know what? It's okay. Even though we've run very long, even though I pretty much have to go to bed as soon as we get off the podcast, it was so worth it to have this conversation with you guys and share our lists. We have a couple more things just to finish up. We're going to do some honorable mentions here in a second, but Will, we had some listener submissions, their top 10 lists. They're not able to listen live this week, unfortunately. But Will, if you want to go first, and then Jim, we'll have you do the second.
Sure.
Yeah, absolutely. So one of our good friends of the show, listeners, and he's actually been a contributor in our Fantastic Fest episodes last year, Simon Tolhurst, who, just a plug for him, you can read what he writes at thatguymovieblog.blogspot.com. He sent us his top 10 list, and his is in no particular order. He didn't rank them, so it's just an alphabetical order. And his picks were Bad Times at the El Royale, Black Klansman, Custody, which I still haven't seen, Isle of Dogs, I Used to Be Normal, a boy band fangirl story, which I watched with him, and it was a ton of fun. See You Up There, The Shape of Water, Sorry to Bother You, Upgrade, and Widows.
Nice.
Ooh, he has Upgrade on that list. That was a fun movie.
Upgrade really in my top 25. It didn't make my top 10, but that was a lot of fun, that movie. He also has some movies that from like last year that he probably didn't get to see until this,
Full disclosure, yeah, he's in Australia, so they have a slightly different distribution schedule there. So like Shape of Water was one that wasn't on our list this year because it was on our last year list. It wasn't released in Australia until 2018. So that's why that one, for example, is on his list.
Totally counts.
Yep,
absolutely.
Counts.
Yep. Absolutely. And we also have a submission by Clyde Day, who's a Facebook friend, a really good friend of the show. He's provided me with, you can see my new Godzilla behind me. He didn't provide me that, but he provided me with some Godzilla art that's on my wall over here that you can't see. He's a fellow G fan, let's just say that. Clyde Day. He says that Black Panther has to be his number one. He says he's in love with Okoye and the Dora characters. When she said, quote, "If he touches you again, I will impale him to that desk." He fell in love. So he's a big fan of the Black Panther movie, as we were too. Didn't make my top 10, but it was definitely in consideration. We enjoyed that movie as a superhero movie. So good pick, Clyde.
Indeed. All right, guys, it's time for some honorable mentions. We ready to go?
Sure.
All right, Jim, you go first. Give us a quick.
I'll go really quick. I mentioned that there were a couple that didn't just miss my list that you guys had on there. 8th Grade was one. Won't You Be My Neighbor was another. Can You Ever Forgive Me? The Melissa McCarthy movie where she gives a great performance is in there. Just missed my list. Border, a kind of a Norwegian folk tale / horror movie / morality tale. I love that movie. It just missed, was my number 11. And one more I want to mention, the only superhero movie close to my top 10, Aquaman. Yep. Aquaman made it.
Nice.
It was just so much fun, over the top fun, that I actually enjoyed a superhero movie more than the others this year. So
there you go. All right. Excellent. Will, what were your honorable mentions?
So starting with the 3 that like almost made my top 10, and like I count them as like almost top 10s, and that was Leave No Trace, Spider-Man Into the Spider-Verse, which is another film that made me emotional just at how good it was, and Blind Spotting. But other films that I enjoyed this year, just laundry listed, are Madeline's Madeline, 8th Grade, Black Panther, Isle of Dogs, We the Animals, which, Jim, you need to watch. It should be right up your alley.
I did see it.
Oh,
I did see it. We'll talk about it later.
We need to talk soon. Border, Wildlife, Paddington 2, Black Klansman, Can You Ever Forgive Me, The Guilty, and The Endless.
Nice, Will. I'm surprised The Endless didn't sneak onto your list. I know how much you love that movie.
Mid-year, it was one of my contenders, and just so many other things came along that like kind of pushed it back, and it's still one of the most worthy films of the year. It's just, it didn't make it further up my list.
Excellent.
That happens sometimes, but that's a mark of a good year, right? When you have so many things, like, gosh, 2018, great
problem to have.
Crop of movies, right? Let's see, some honorable mentions for me. These are in no particular order. I didn't stack rank these. But Spider-Man Into the Spider-Verse. Love that movie.
Getting a lot of love.
Just barely missed my top 10, you guys. Like, just barely. Alpha, I really enjoyed.
Surprise.
Also a good movie.
Surprise, yep.
Believe it or not, Jurassic World Fallen Kingdom, I really enjoyed. I'm a sucker for that franchise. Kind of along those lines, also The Meg, believe it or not. Some of these are just because they were so much fun. A Simple Favor, if you like that sultry, smoky, like women, like mystery kind of thing. Aquaman, Jim, made my list. The 2018 version of Halloween was awesome. And a movie that I just saw literally like a week ago with you while I was dying on the couch from food poisoning, called Dumplin'.
Yeah, Dumplin' was surprisingly good. And you got another, Sammy gave you props for your Alpha pick. I think Alpha doesn't get as much love as it deserves, as a nice, family adventure movie. I really like that movie. As long as you can read, you're good at that movie. Yeah. You can't be too young. Can't be too young. Yeah.
Oh, goodness. Well, gentlemen, I believe that officially puts a wrap on 2018. Of course, some of these movies will be up for discussion again, I'm sure, when we do our Oscar show. And I mean, I guess next week we're going to be talking about some of them too. So I guess it doesn't put a wrap on 2018 officially, but it puts a wrap on our top 10 show. So there you go. Just want to give a big thank you to all the folks who were with us in the live chat, who shared their picks, who shared their thoughts on some of these films. We can't always keep up with the pace of the live chat, but we adore and love you guys. Also, to those of you who are listening through the magic of digital tape delay on iTunes, Spotify, etc., we'd still love to hear your lists as well. So pull us up on Facebook, Movie Bears Podcast. You'll see a post for this episode. Go ahead and share this list with them. We'd love to engage with you guys around those. Really fast, because I know we're long in the tooth already. Jim, where can people find and interact with you online?
I have a Twitter account. It's at JJP Out West, all one word, at JJP Out West. I'm also on Facebook, Jim Pugliafico, my name. Look for me there and friend me and say hi and wave to me, whatever Facebook does these days.
All right. And Will, how about you?
Find me on Twitter at Whatever Cove. Hey, it's right here at the bottom of the screen. Find me on Facebook. Just look for William Lindis. Hey, also at the bottom of the screen. Look for me on Letterboxd, where I've logged all of these films, and you could have technically cheated and seen what my list was in advance. If you followed me there, just look for William Lindis. And I don't normally do things on YouTube. It's not a thing that I push or do much with, but I did a video version of my top 25. So if you look for me there, you can find that as well.
Rock on. And you can find me on Twitter at iBradPro. You can also find me on Facebook. Just search for Brad Harris. I'm the one that likely has Bear, Chubb, and Chaser friends in common with you. And can you find me anywhere else? I don't know, probably nowhere else that I want to mention on the show, but it has been a total joy hanging out with everybody this week. Man, great year of film. 2019 has a lot of great stuff coming up for us too. So I'm already imagining what this show is going to be like next year. Can't wait to see what fills our lists. But have a good one, everyone. We'll talk to you next week. It is the MBP Awards show, where we award awards for, fun superlative categories that we've come up with. We think are going to be fun. We'd love to hear your choices for some of those awards. Will, I know we're going to get some stuff going on Facebook, right?
Yeah, by the time people have listened to this on iTunes or Spotify or wherever it is that you happen to be listening to this, it should already be up on our social media page. For those that are tuned in live, we're going to have a post going up on tomorrow, Thursday the 10th, that has all of the different categories. There's 10 categories in total. You can put in whatever pick you want for your categories, so that we can read them live on the air.
Like most unexpected penis, that kind of stuff.
Surprise boner.
What was that?
There's categories like best soundtrack score. There's categories like biggest tearjerker moment, or one of my favorite categories is the hell yeah moment, like the moment that just makes you stand up and go like hell yeah. So we'll have what the categories are and kind of like what you need to do to be able to contribute. But just look on our social media feeds; you'll be able to see it all there.
Rock on. All right. Well, it's been a pleasure. We'll see you all next time. Goodbye.
Bye.
Bye-bye.